The city of Ouagadougou was a place of contrasts. At its heart, the avenues gleamed with ambition, new roads paved with promise, towers of glass reflecting the hot African sun, and the proud gates of the presidential palace where guards in crisp uniforms stood like statues. But if one walked far enough from the boulevards of power, the shine faded into something harsher. The air grew heavier, carrying the smoke of charcoal fires and the sour tang of stagnant water. Here, the ground was not paved but worn by countless bare feet. Here lived the forgotten. In this place of dust and shadows, a boy named Malik carved out his existence. He could not have been more than 17, though hunger had stunted his growth. His frame was narrow, his clothes stitched from the remnants of cast-offs. Yet there was something about him that unsettled those who looked too closely. It was not his eyes, though they were sharp and amber like the desert fox. It was not his voice, though when he spoke the cadence was strangely steady, carrying weight beyond his years. No, what unsettled people was his bearing. Even barefoot in the mud, even when reaching into the garbage heaps for scraps, Malik carried himself with a strange, stubborn dignity. The slum dwellers whispered about it when they thought he could not hear. Look at him. He stands like he's king of the earth. His walk is not like ours. He walks as if the streets should part before him. Maybe the boy is cursed. Children mocked him, but secretly admired him. Old women blessed him, crossing themselves as though afraid of spirits. And Malik, though he heard it all, spoke little of himself. Until one day, pressed too far, he declared words that would set in motion a chain of events no one could have foreseen. "I am no beggar," he said, standing before the market crowd, his dusty face lifted to the sun. "I am a son of kings. I am the prince they buried at birth." Laughter burst around him, cruel and loud. The sellers of millet and salt cackled, slapping their thighs. Some jeered, tossing crusts of bread at his feet, but others did not laugh. A handful of the oldest men grew very quiet, their gazes sharpening with the memory of stories half forgotten. That night, in the courtyard of the presidential palace, the whispers reached ears of power. President Ibrahim. Traoré was a man accustomed to whispers. They drifted through corridors of politics like smoke, rumors of plots, gossip of foreign envoys, old wives' tales from the marketplace. Most of them burned away in the light of day. Yet this rumor clung like stubborn ash. A boy in the slums claims to be of royal blood. At first, Ibrahim dismissed it. The palace advisors smirked as they relayed the tale. "Another mad beggar seeking notice," they said. "The city breeds them like flies." But something in Ibrahim stirred uneasily. He sat alone in his chamber that night, the lamplight flickering, against maps and papers. On the desk lay reports of food shortages, trade disputes, soldiers demanding pay. Yet his eyes strayed not to these crises but to the shadowed window, beyond which the city sprawled in silence. He thought of his own childhood, the dust, the hunger, the memory of being overlooked by the powerful. He thought of what it meant to rise from nothing, and a question nagged at him. What if the boy was not lying? For Ibrahim knew better than most how deeply the past of his country had been buried. Kings once ruled these lands, long before generals and politicians carved their empires. Lineages had been erased, heirs exiled, bloodlines scattered like seed in the wind. What if one seed had taken root where no one expected? Meanwhile, Malik's life grew stranger. The market folk who once mocked him began to watch him with curiosity. Some brought him food. A crippled old griot, keeper of ancient stories, sought him out, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Tell me, child," the griot asked, "who told you of this blood you claim?" Malik's eyes burned with something between pride and pain. "No one told me," he answered. "It was never told. It was remembered, I have dreams that are not mine. I see halls of marble, men bowing low, and a mother I cannot touch. When I wake, I taste tears. Do beggars dream such things? The griot said nothing, but in his silence lay the weight of recognition. And so the rumor spread, like a fire carried by the Harmattan winds. The boy who calls himself Prince. The boy who claims the throne was stolen from him. In the tea stalls, men argued whether he was a fraud or a sign from God. In the alleys, children began to follow him, chanting, "Prince, Prince, Prince." One evening, as the sun sank blood-red, over Ouagadougou, Malik climbed the crumbling wall of a deserted villa and gazed toward the skyline. Beyond the shanties, beyond the smoke and the cracked roads, he could see the faint gleam of the presidential palace. His fists clenched at his side. "They think me mad," he whispered to the wind, "but the truth walks with me. One day they will see." In the palace, Ibrahim finally spoke the words that had been circling in his mind for days. "Bring him to me," he told his aide. The man blinked. "The beggar boy, Excellence? Surely he is beneath. Bring him to me," Ibrahim repeated, his voice cutting like steel. For he knew that truth and lies alike had power. And sometimes the fate of nations turned not on armies, but on the whispers of a single child. And so the path of a ragged boy from the slums and a president forged. By struggle began to draw together, two lives on a collision course with destiny. Neither yet knew how deeply their fates were bound, or how the buried secrets of the past would rise again to shake the future of an entire nation. The boy in the dust had spoken. The city was listening, and the storm was about to begin. The morning sun rose over Ouagadougou like molten gold, spilling across rooftops and fields, gilding even the broken walls of the city's forgotten quarters. The palace woke early. Servants scurried down marble corridors with trays of tea, ministers arrived with their briefcases, and soldiers polished their boots until they gleamed. The world inside those gates moved with the polished rhythm of authority. But Ibrahim Traoré's mind was far from polished order. He had risen before dawn, restless, pacing the terrace as the horizon blushed with the first light. The cool air carried the scent of dust and faint cooking fires rising from the distant slums. His gaze, as if drawn by some unseen hand, lingered in that direction. It was there, in those streets, that the boy lived, the boy who claimed he was. Born of kings, Ibrahim did not believe in superstition, yet he understood the power of myth. He had seen soldiers fight beyond exhaustion, fueled not by rations or orders, but by a single story whispered in the dark, that their cause was destined, their leader chosen. He had built his own life upon such foundations, the story of a soldier who rose from nothing, who wrestled power back into the hands of his people. And now, from the dust, came another story, one that threatened to eclipse his own. His generals, blunt men hardened by campaigns, dismissed it outright. "Your Excellency," said General Caboret, leaning over the polished table in the council room, "it is a trick. Some street urchin stirs trouble. He is nothing. Say the word, and we will silence him before this nonsense spreads." Others nodded eagerly, some with the cold efficiency of men accustomed to cutting off problems at their root. But Ibrahim sat back, steepling his fingers, his eyes narrowing. Silence him. How easy it was to erase a life, yet the erasure of a whisper often only made it louder. He had learned this in battle and in politics. A dead man could speak louder than a living one, if his death carried mystery. "No," Ibrahim said finally, his voice measured, calm. "We will not silence him. Not yet." The generals shifted uneasily, exchanging glances. The ministers, more cautious, waited for his reasoning. "We must know the truth," Ibrahim continued. "Is he a fraud, as you say? Then he is nothing. and the people will forget. But if— he let the word linger, heavy as iron. If there is even a thread of truth, we cannot ignore it. This nation is built on fragile trust. A single crack in its foundation can bring it down. The room fell into a reluctant silence. No one dared contradict him further, but as they filed out, Ibrahim caught the look in their eyes, calculating, unsettled. Some feared the boy's claim. Others feared what Ibrahim might do with it. Later that afternoon, Ibrahim dismissed his entourage and rode out into the city in disguise, as he often did when restlessness gnawed at him. He wore a simple bubu, faded and plain, and pulled a scarf across his face against the dust. Only 2 guards followed at a distance, unseen shadows blending with the crowds. He passed through neighborhoods where the streets grew narrower, the buildings older, walls sagging under the weight of neglect. Vendors called out for customers, their voices sharp as knives, while children darted between carts and goats. The air smelled of sweat, grilled maize, and the smoke of cheap charcoal. This was the other face of his nation, the face that rarely saw the inside of a council chamber. And it was here, amid the dust and clamor, that Ibrahim saw him. Malik. The boy stood on a low wall, speaking to a gathered crowd. His clothes hung loose on his thin frame, yet his posture was unbowed. His hands moved as he spoke, not with the wild gestures of a street preacher, but with a strange restraint, as if he were addressing not rabble, but an assembly. "And you mock me," Malik's voice carried firm, though the market buzzed around him. "But the blood that runs through me is not of the gutter. I am the son of a queen who wept in silence, the heir they cast into shadow. You may laugh, but the truth does not fade because men refuse to see it." Some jeered, throwing pebbles. Others, especially the older women, listened with knitted brows, torn between doubt and a stirring they could not name. Ibrahim's chest tightened as he watched. There was something unsettling in the boy's gaze, an intensity, a fire that burned too brightly for mere fantasy. Ibrahim had seen that fire before. He had seen it in men who refused to bow to colonizers, in comrades who stood their ground when bullets rained like storms. But this was no soldier. This was a boy who spoke of palaces and thrones with the certainty of memory. For a long moment, Ibrahim studied him. Then Malik's eyes, scanning the crowd, fell directly upon him, and in that instant Ibrahim felt as though the boy had recognized him, not as a stranger in rags, but as something else. Their gazes locked, the noise of the market fading to a dull roar. Malik's lips did not move, yet his eyes spoke a challenge. "Do you see me now? Do you deny me still?" A chill passed through Ibrahim. He turned away, pulling his scarf higher, and strode back toward the waiting car. But inside, unease gnawed at him like a worm in fruit. That night, Ibrahim could not sleep. The palace was quiet, yet his mind roared with questions. He poured himself tea, pacing the balcony under a silver moon. Who was this boy? He had seen impostors before, men who forged papers, who claimed false bloodlines to seize land or wealth. But impostors rarely carried themselves with such conviction. Rarely did their words carry echoes that stirred the hearts of listeners. And Ibrahim, against his will, found himself remembering his own childhood hunger, his own voice, ignored until he made the world listen. Could it be that another voice, equally forgotten, had risen from the dust to claim a truth buried in silence? The following morning, Ibrahim summoned a man few in the palace knew existed, Dr. Amadou, the nation's foremost keeper of genealogies, one of the last scholars who still studied the bloodlines of kings. "You will look into this," Ibrahimi ordered, quietly, discreetly. "I want no minister, no general to know. Trace the boy's story. Test what can be tested. If there is truth, we must know it. If there is none, we must know that too." Dr. Amadou bowed, his aged eyes betraying neither doubt nor surprise. "As you wish, Excellence." As the scholar departed, Ibrahim stood by the window, gazing once more toward the far-off slums. The boy in the dust had planted a seed of unease in the heart of a president, and seeds, Ibrahim knew, had a way of breaking through stone when least expected. He did not yet know whether Malik was fraud or fate. But he knew this: his story had only begun, and stories, once born, could not be silenced. The rains had come early that year, and with them the smell of damp earth clinging to the city like a heavy memory. Streets in the poorer quarters turned to mud, swallowing sandals and cartwheels, while the palace grounds remained a world apart. Gardens trimmed, marble steps rinsed clean by servants who worked before dawn. But Ibrahim's thoughts were not with roses or stone. They lingered still on the boy in the slums. For days he tried to focus on the business of state, treaties, grain imports, the endless negotiations with foreign envoys who arrived with smiles and hidden knives. Yet each time he looked into their eyes, his mind wandered. He saw not diplomats but Malik, those fierce amber eyes, that voice claiming a birthright no one could prove, no one could dismiss. Sleep grew scarce. Dreams carried Ibrahim into strange corridors of memory. A woman's wail carried down a palace hall, a child's cry muffled before it reached the air. He woke each time with sweat across his brow, heart pounding as though chased by ghosts. At last he decided. He would meet the boy, not as a president receiving a subject, but as a man seeking answers. The plan was simple. No guards, no ministers. Just Ibrahim in plain clothes, slipping into the heart of the city as he had done many times before. It was a practice that had kept him grounded, though few in his circle approved. Tonight, it served another purpose: to see the boy without the distortion of ceremony. The alleys were narrow, their walls streaked with smoke, the smell of frying oil and open drains mingling in the air. Ibrahim walked slowly, his scarf pulled low, observing without drawing attention. Men huddled around tea stalls argued over football. Women in faded wrappers sat weaving mats by candlelight. The city was alive, not with speeches or decrees, but with the raw pulse of survival. And there, he saw him again. Malik sat at the edge of a broken fountain surrounded by children who listened with wide eyes. His thin arms moved as he spoke, sketching invisible palaces in the air, describing gardens none of them had seen. His voice did not waver, even when laughter echoed from the nearby stalls. "And though they cast me aside, I live still," Malik said, his words calm, measured. "Blood is not erased by exile. A seed buried in darkness does not die. It waits for the sun." One of the younger boys tugged at his sleeve. "But if you are prince, where is your crown?" Malik smiled faintly, not with arrogance but with a sadness too deep for his years. "A crown is not always gold, child. Sometimes it is the weight you carry in silence, the memory that will not leave you." The children, though they did not understand, grew quiet. Ibrahim stepped closer, the shadows clinging to him. For a moment he simply watched. Malik's face, though lean, bore the kind of defiance born not from arrogance but from hunger sharpened into iron. His posture, upright even in rags, was what unsettled Ibrahim most. It was not the posture of a boy broken by poverty. It was the posture of someone who believed in a truth too stubborn to die. Then, as if sensing him, Malik lifted his gaze. Their eyes met. The space between them seemed to collapse. The noise of the street, the laughter of drunk men, the hiss of oil on fire, all of it faded into silence. Ibrahim felt as though the boy's eyes pierced through his disguise, stripping away the scarf, the plain clothes, seeing him not as a stranger but as the man he truly was. And for the first time in years, Ibrahim felt the strange weight of being recognized, not by title, but by something deeper, something wordless. Malik stood slowly, his gaze never leaving Ibrahim's. He said nothing, but his expression carried both challenge and plea. "Do you deny me now, or do you see what I am?" Ibrahim's chest tightened. He turned sharply, the spell breaking, and walked back into the alley before the boy, or his own doubts, could follow. Back at the palace, the night grew long. Rain pattered against the windows as Ibrahim sat alone, a lamp flickering at his side. His thoughts circled like vultures. Why had he felt that way under the boy's stare? It was not fear, nor pity. It was recognition, like glimpsing a reflection he did not expect. On his desk lay a folder Dr. Amadou had sent earlier. Inside were fragments of old genealogies, brittle papers smuggled from crumbling archives, notes of banished princes, exiled, sons, whispers of heirs erased from record after coups and assassinations, and among them, a passage describing a child born to a royal concubine, spirited away under the cover of night, never seen again. The year matched Malik's age. The place matched his claim. Coincidence? Or truth clawing its way out of the grave? Ibrahim shut the folder, the lamplight catching his hardened features. He had lived his life defying destiny, a soldier who became president by sheer will, and now destiny seemed to come knocking again, this time in the form of a ragged boy with fire in his eyes. He whispered into the silence of his chamber, "Who are you, child?" But the only answer was the rain. The following day, a storm of whispers spread through the city. Some claimed they had seen the president himself walking the alleys, his face half hidden, his gaze fixed on the boy. Others said Malik had spoken with a stranger of great authority, though none could agree on the details. Markets buzzed with speculation. Tea houses rang with debates. Was the boy truly a prince? If so, what did it mean for the man who now ruled? Ibrahim heard of these rumors through his ministers, their voices sharp with warning. "Excellence! The people must not be allowed to believe such nonsense," they urged. "It will breed unrest. Squash it now, before it grows." But Ibrahim remained, silent, his eyes unreadable. For within him the unease had deepened. He had seen Malik. He had felt the pull of his presence. And though he could command armies, silence ministers, and rewrite laws, he could not command his own heart to dismiss what his eyes had seen. The boy was no longer just a rumor. He was real, flesh and blood. And he carried with him a question that could unravel the fragile balance of power. That night, as Ibrahim stood on his balcony overlooking the city, he knew the path ahead had changed. The boy would not vanish. The boy would not be silenced. And the truth, whatever it was drawing nearer, like thunder rolling across the horizon. Ibrahim's gaze hardened. If destiny had returned in the form of a beggar child, then he would meet it face to face. No crown, no throne, no nation could remain untouched once their fates collided. At the palace, for all its marble and polished brass, was never truly silent. Even at night, footsteps echoed in distant corridors, guards coughed at their posts, fountains whispered in the courtyards. Yet beneath the familiar hum of power, a new sound had begun to creep into its walls. Whispers of uncertainty. The boy in the slums. Malik. At first it was only the chatter of servants who carried baskets from the market, repeating tales they had overheard. The prince who was thrown. Away, the heir who had returned. But like a spark in dry grass, the story spread. Soon, even the aides and junior officers in the palace muttered about it over tea. They lowered their voices, but the words were there. What if it is true? What if the president is not the only one with claim to the throne of hearts? Ibrahim felt it long before it reached his ears formally. He felt it in the subtle glances exchanged between ministers during council, in the way soldiers straightened too quickly when he passed, as if afraid he could read their thoughts. Whispers had a way of slipping under doors and into men's minds. Whispers, Ibrahim knew, could be more dangerous than bullets. General Kabore was the first to confront him directly. "Excellence," the man said, bowing stiffly before straightening his thick frame. "This rumor must be dealt with. Every day the boy's voice grows. Merchants speak of him. Old griots call him a child of destiny. We cannot let such poison spread." Ibrahim studied him across the desk, his expression calm but unreadable. The general's uniform gleamed, medals lined neatly across his chest, but his eyes betrayed unease. Men like Kabore thrived on order, on ranks and chains of command. The idea of a barefoot boy commanding loyalty unsettled him in ways no foreign army could, and how would you deal with it? Ibrahim asked quietly. "Remove him," Kabore replied bluntly. "Cut the root before it becomes a tree. No people will rise for a ghost if the ghost is gone." Others nodded when the general spoke. Ministers shifted, some mumbling agreement, others staring hard at their papers to avoid choosing a side. But Ibrahim did not answer at once. He leaned back, fingers tapping the desk in slow rhythm. His gaze was steady, his voice measured when he finally spoke. "Tell me, General, have you ever seen a weed destroyed by cutting its stalk? It grows back stronger. To kill it, you must dig out the root. But what if the root lies not in the boy, but in our history?" Kabore frowned, unused to riddles. Ibrahim's eyes narrowed. "Do you think the people hunger for his blood? No. They hunger for a story, one that makes sense of their suffering. If we strike him down too soon, we give that story the martyr it craves. And martyrs," his voice dropped lower, "never die." Silence filled the council room. The ministers shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to press further. "Leave him," Ibrahim concluded, his tone final. "Watch him, yes, but do not touch. Him, not yet." The meeting dispersed, but unease lingered like smoke. Already Ibrahim could feel the shadow growing, the shadow of a throne that was not his, a claim that had not yet been made but already began to stir hearts. In the streets, Malik's presence grew like a tide. He no longer had to shout his story. The people asked him to repeat it. They leaned close when he spoke of palaces he had never seen, of halls echoing with songs of kings. Some gave him food, others coins. A few knelt before him, tears in their eyes, murmuring prayers as if he were holy. Malik accepted little of what was offered. His pride was sharp, almost dangerous. Yet the more he resisted adoration, the more it was given. To the people, his refusal of riches was proof that he was not like the greedy leaders who had come before. And Ibrahim, from his palace, watched this unfold through reports delivered in cautious voices. Each word struck like a drumbeat in his chest. The boy is becoming a symbol. One evening, Ibrahim summoned Dr. Amadou again. The old scholar carried with him a leather-bound ledger, its pages brittle with age. He laid it on the president's desk with trembling hands. "This," he whispered, "is one of the few surviving genealogies from the royal court of 40, years ago. Many records were burned during the coups, but this escaped." Ibrahim leaned forward, his eyes scanning faded ink. Names sprawled across the page in neat columns, connected by lines of descent. Kings, queens, concubines, heirs, and then he froze. There it was, a son, unnamed, recorded only as born to Aysata of the northern court, removed from lineage. Beside the entry, a faint annotation, exiled at birth. Ibrahim's pulse quickened. He looked up sharply. "Exiled? Why?" Amadou shook his head. "The record does not say, only that he was removed. Such things were not uncommon. Threats to succession were often erased quietly. Some children vanished into villages, others into graves. The silence between them grew heavy. "Excellence," Amadou said cautiously. "If this boy truly is that child, then his blood ties him to the throne that no longer exists. It is a throne buried in history, yet history is never truly dead." Ibrahim closed the book with a snap, his jaw set. The truth had begun to take shape, but it was a shape that offered no peace. If Malik's claim was real, it was a sword hanging over them both. Days later, Ibrahim stood again on the palace balcony, looking out across the city. The sun was sinking, painting the horizon in bruised shades of crimson and violet. From this height he could see the sprawl of shanties, the winding streets where Malik's voice rose each night like a drumbeat in the dark. And he felt it, the stirring of something beyond his control. The boy was no longer just a whisper. He was becoming a force. Already the generals grumbled, already the ministers plotted, already foreign powers would be listening. Ibrahim could almost feel the weight pressing upon him, as though the shadow of another throne, older, deeper, hidden, was rising behind his own, and in his heart the question burned hotter with each passing day. Was Malik a fraud to be silenced, or a truth that, once revealed, could shatter everything Ibrahim had built? That night, Ibrahim dreamed again. He walked through a vast hall of marble, empty and echoing. At its far end sat a throne draped in cloth, its shape concealed. From behind the cloth came a child's voice, clear and unyielding. "Do not fear me. Fear what you have forgotten." He woke in darkness, his breath ragged, his chest tight. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, and Ibrahim knew the storm was no longer coming. It was here. Perfect. Now we step into the heart of the mystery. Here is the Surat-Tune next full chapter, 200 words, in the same cinematic narration style. Palace air was heavy with anticipation. Ministers came and went, voices sharp with urgency, but beneath the surface ran a silence Ibrahim could not escape, a silence that seemed to whisper the boy's name. Malik. For weeks now, the whispers had grown louder, not just in the markets or the tea stalls, but in the private corridors of power. Foreign diplomats had begun to inquire delicately, testing the waters, probing with cautious smiles. Even among the soldiers, rumors ran like wildfire. The hidden prince has returned. Ibrahim felt the weight of it pressing harder each day. It was no longer enough to observe from the shadows, no longer enough to let the boy's story run unchecked. If Malik's claim was a lie, then it had to be proven. If it was truth, then Ibrahim's gaze darkened each time he considered what that might mean, and so he resolved upon the one path left to him. Proof. Not words, not whispers, but blood. Dr. Amadou was summoned in the quiet hours when most of the palace slept. The old scholar came with his slow, deliberate steps, carrying not dusty ledgers this time, but a small lacquered chest, polished smooth by generations of hands. Inside lay relics most of the nation had forgotten existed, fragments of royal regalia, pieces of bone, and vials sealed decades ago. "Excellence," Amadou said, setting the chest gently upon the desk. "These are remnants of the royal line. They were preserved before the fires of the coup consumed the archives. Only a few know they still exist." Ibrahim studied the relics in silence. Each object carried a strange gravity, as though the very air around them thickened. The bones, he was told, belonged to kings buried before the line was broken. The vials contained strands of hair, drops of blood, relics meant for history. But now, history demanded their return to purpose. "Can they be tested?" Ibrahim asked, his voice low. Amadou nodded. "Modern science can tell us what the stories cannot. If the boy shares their blood, it will be revealed." Ibrahim's jaw tightened. To speak the words felt dangerous, as though they themselves carried the power to unravel him. Then we will test him. The task of bringing Malik to the palace fell not to soldiers, too conspicuous, but to Ibrahim's most trusted aide, Captain Suleiman. A man of quiet loyalty, Suleiman slipped into the slums at night, cloaked against recognition. He found Malik near the fountain again, surrounded by fewer children now, but watched by older men who nodded gravely at his words. The boy spoke, not with boasting, but with the calm weight of conviction. When Suleiman approached, Malik's eyes turned to him as though expecting him all along. "The palace calls," Suleiman said quietly. "You must come." The boy studied him for a long moment, then rose without protest. "At last," he murmured. They brought him through the side gates, under cover of darkness. The palace, which most citizens saw only from afar, unfolded around Malik in hushed grandeur. The wide courtyards, the polished floors, the guards standing like shadows against columns. His bare feet made no sound on the marble. Ibrahim awaited him in a chamber lit by a single lamp, its glow soft against the heavy curtains. For the first time, the two stood face to face with no crowd, no disguise, no distance between them. Malik bowed his head slightly, not in submission, but as one acknowledging an equal. "You have sought me," he said quietly. Ibrahim's gaze hardened. "I seek the truth." A silence stretched between them, heavy, electric. Ibrahim gestured to the table where the chest of relics lay open. A physician stepped forward with careful hands, carrying vials and instruments gleaming under the lamplight. "You will give a sample of your blood," Ibrahim said. His tone was measured, but his chest was tight with the gravity of what was unfolding. "It will be tested against the royal line." Malik did not flinch. He extended his arm, his face calm, his eyes steady. "Take what you must. My blood is not afraid." The physician's needle gleamed, pierced the boy's skin, and drew forth a vial of crimson. Malik watched the dark liquid coil into the glass as though watching fate itself being bottled. When it was done, he sat in silence, his arm steady, his gaze never leaving Ibrahim. "You already know," Malik said softly. Ibrahim frowned. "Know what?" "That we are bound," the boy answered. "You feel it, though you deny it." For a heartbeat, Ibrahim's chest tightened, but he turned away, hiding the flicker of unease. "Take him back," he ordered Suleiman. "Keep him under watch until the results are known." Days turned into a slow torment. The samples were sent discreetly to a trusted laboratory, handled only by men loyal to Amadou. Ibrahim went about his duties as president, but beneath the surface his mind churned endlessly. He signed trade agreements, but his thoughts lingered on the boy's steady eyes. He inspected new barracks, but the echo of Malik's words followed him. "You already know." At night, sleep brought no peace. He dreamed of two thrones side by side, one of stone, one of gold. Upon the golden throne sat the boy, his eyes burning with both innocence and command. Upon the stone throne sat Ibrahim himself, his hands heavy with chains invisible yet unbreakable. Finally, the results arrived. Dr. Amadou brought them in a sealed envelope, his hands trembling. Ibrahim dismissed all others, tearing the seal, with deliberate calm, though his heart pounded in his chest. Inside, the paper bore the cold precision of science. Comparisons, sequences, markers aligned. The conclusion written in neat letters. Genetic compatibility with royal lineage. High probability. Ibrahim sat in silence, staring at the words as though they might rearrange themselves into something else. His breath grew heavy. His chest burned. So it was true. The boy's blood carried the echo of kings. The whispers were not just fantasy, not just hunger for a story. Malik was tied by blood to the throne that had been buried, erased, forgotten. Yet the conclusion was not absolute. Science could prove kinship, but it could not name destinies. Malik's blood might connect him to the royal line, but it did not say he was heir. Still, to the people, such distinctions mattered little. Blood was enough. Ibrahim pressed the paper flat upon the desk, staring long into its certainty. The truth had come, sharp and merciless, and now, he knew, the true storm would begin. The envelope lay hidden in Ibrahim's desk, its words etched into his mind like a scar. For days, he carried the secret alone, never speaking Malik's name aloud within the palace walls. Even among his most trusted advisers, silence was the shield he clung to, but power has its own ears. Whispers do not stay buried long in Ouagadougou, especially when they involve crowns and bloodlines. At first, the murmurs came faintly, like the hiss of dry grass in the Harmattan winds. A market woman telling her neighbor that the president had summoned a boy from the slums. A guard at the southern gate swearing he saw a barefoot child brought in under night's cover. A physician's assistant, drunk on millet beer, bragging he had touched the blood of kings. By the time these threads reached the capital's salons and backroom cafes, the story had twisted into something far larger. A hidden prince has returned. His blood proves it. The palace cannot hide him forever. Ibrahim noticed the change almost instantly. Ministers lingered too long at council, their questions weighted with double meaning. Foreign envoys looked at him with new, measuring eyes. Even his generals, usually blunt and loyal, seemed uneasy, as though awaiting instructions he had not yet given. And still, Ibrahim told no one of the results. To reveal them was to risk unleashing forces even he could not control. But someone else had already chosen betrayal. The Minister of Commerce, Boubacar Diallo, was a man whose loyalty bent whichever way the wind of fortune blew. For years he had smiled at Ibrahim's rise, but in private he longed for the lost monarchy, dreaming of a return to the Gilded Age when nobles feasted and merchants thrived unchecked. When word of Malik reached his ears, Diallo's heart leapt. To him, the boy was not just a child, but an opportunity. If nurtured, if shaped, Malik could be the symbol that toppled Ibrahim's rule. And so Diallo sent his messengers. At night, in the shadows of shuttered houses, he whispered the tale into the ears of those who still carried the monarchist flame. Rival clans in the north, merchants in exile, even foreign agents hungry for influence. The blood has been tested, he told them. The boy is of the royal line. The president cannot contain it much longer. Each word was a spark, and soon the fire spread. By the third week, Ibrahim could feel the unrest rolling across the capital like distant thunder. Demonstrations began to form in the markets, small at first, just a handful of men shouting, but swelling with each passing day. They carried old flags, the symbols of a dynasty thought extinguished. "Long live the prince," they cried. "Long live the blood of kings." The security forces dispersed them, but the chants echoed in the streets long after. Inside the palace, the air turned heavy with suspicion. Ibrahim's generals demanded answers, their voices edged with frustration. "Excellence," growled General Kabore, his scarred hands clenched upon the table. "These rumors are destabilizing the army. Men whisper in the barracks. They ask if we serve a president, or if soon we must kneel to a king." Ibrahim said nothing, his face carved from stone. Another minister leaned forward, voice trembling. "If this boy exists, if he is truly royal blood, then we must silence him before the nation tears itself apart." The words hung in the air like poison. Silence. Then Ibrahim's voice, low and sharp. "Anyone who touches that boy answers to me." The room froze. None dared respond. But Ibrahim saw the glances exchanged, quick and furtive. Already his counsel was fracturing. That night, unable to rest, Ibrahim walked alone through the gardens of the palace. The moon cast silver light upon the fountains, the trees whispering with the night wind. Yet even here he felt the weight of eyes unseen, the claws of betrayal digging deeper into his rule. It was then that Soliman approached, his voice urgent but quiet. "Excellence, a message from Dr. Amadou." Ibrahim turned. The captain's face was pale. He handed Ibrahim a folded note, its seal broken in haste. The words were few, but enough to send a chill through his veins. "The results have leaked. Someone in the circle has betrayed you. The monarchists know the boy lives." Ibrahim crushed the note in his fist. His worst fear had come true, not through enemies beyond the walls, but through traitors within them. Meanwhile, in the slums, Malik felt the tide shift around him. No longer was he merely a curiosity to the children of the fountain. Now strangers approached, bowing low, calling him Prince. Women pressed food into his hands. Men pledged him loyalty in whispers. At night, fires lit in hidden courtyards where men drank and sang of kings past. They looked to him with eyes blazing with hope and vengeance. But Malik remained quiet, solemn. He accepted their offerings, but he did not join their feasts. Often he sat apart, gazing at the stars, as though listening to voices only he could hear. When Soliman came to fetch him for questioning, Malik looked up calmly and asked, "The palace trembles, doesn't it?" Soliman frowned. "What do you mean?" "The blood has spoken," the boy said, "and now men must choose whether to honor it or fear it." Within the palace walls, Ibrahim gathered his closest circle, just 4 men he trusted above. All others. The results were laid before them, the truth spoken at last. But trust, he realized, was already shattered. For as his allies debated fiercely, Ibrahim caught the flicker of eyes avoiding his, hands twitching with unease. Among these 4 men, he knew, at least one had already betrayed him. The thought coiled in his chest like a serpent. He could feel the palace tightening around him, every wall whispering of disloyalty. The boy's existence was no longer a question of truth. It was a weapon, wielded by unseen hands. And somewhere in the night, those hands were sharpening their blades. The night air was heavy, thick with a heat that clung to the skin and refused to lift. Ouagadougou slept restlessly beneath. A pale moon, the city unaware that its fate was already shifting in the shadows. Inside the presidential palace, Ibrahim stood by his window, the city lights flickering in the distance. His thoughts swirled with the betrayal that had seeped into his council, the whispers of a prince that had spread like wildfire. Sleep had eluded him for days. Every knock on the door, every shuffle of footsteps in the corridor felt like the prelude to treachery. But tonight, there was something different in the air, something sharper, electric, almost metallic. The silence was too deep. The cicadas had stilled. Even the guards seemed uneasy at their posts. Ibrahim felt it before he heard it. The faintest tremor beneath the ground, the rhythm of boots moving in unison. His hand drifted to the pistol resting on his desk, and then it came. The crack of gunfire. The first shots tore through the palace gates. Explosions ripped against the outer walls, shaking the chandeliers from their chains. Guards scrambled, shouting commands, their rifles answering the assault. The sky lit red as fire licked against the garden walls. Mercenaries had come, well-armed, well-funded, and merciless. Their target was not the president. It was the boy. Ibrahim moved swiftly. Through the corridors, his boots echoing against the marble. Soliman appeared at his side, rifle in hand, eyes blazing with urgency. "They're inside the courtyard," Soliman barked. "We must move the boy now." Malik had been kept in a secure chamber deep within the palace, guarded day and night. Yet, even there, Ibrahim knew he was not safe. The two men sprinted through smoke-filled halls, their lungs burning with dust and gunpowder. Screams and gunfire roared around them, the palace transforming into a battlefield. Servants scattered, soldiers fell, flames spread. Ibrahim burst into the chamber where Malik sat, calm as ever, his small frame dwarfed by the vast bed behind him. "They've come for you," Ibrahim said, his voice harsh. "We must go." The boy rose without protest. His eyes, dark and steady, seemed to pierce through the chaos. "I told you," he whispered. "The blood cannot be hidden forever." Ibrahim grabbed his arm, pulling him close. "Blood means nothing if you're dead." They fled through the back corridors, Suleiman clearing the way with bursts of gunfire. Twice they stumbled upon mercenaries, masked men in desert fatigues, rifles raised. Twice Suleiman cut them down before they could fire. The palace groaned with collapse. Smoke coiled through the halls, fire devouring the drapes, the gilded ceilings crumbling above. At one turn they came upon a fallen guard, his chest heaving, blood staining his uniform. Ibrahim knelt, pressing a hand to the man's wound. "Excellence," the guard gasped. They know where he is." His voice broke into coughs and then silence. Ibrahim rose, jaw set. The enemy's precision was too sharp, their knowledge too exact. The betrayal within his circle had not only leaked Malik's existence, it had mapped his every step inside the palace. They reached the eastern wing, where an old servant's passage led toward the stables. Ibrahim knew the route well, having used it in his youth to escape the suffocating halls of ceremony. Tonight it would serve a different purpose. But as they turned the final corridor, they met resistance. A squad of mercenaries blocked the passage, rifles glinting under the dim lamps. Hand over the boy, their leader growled, his French sharp and cold. "Do this, and you live." Ibrahim stepped forward, placing himself between Malik and the rifles. His voice was steel. "You will have to kill me first," the mercenary smirked. "Then so be it." The standoff lasted but a second before Suleiman's rifle roared, bullets sparking against stone. The corridor erupted in chaos. Shouts, gunfire, smoke. Ibrahim shoved Malik against the wall, shielding him with his body as fragments of plaster exploded around them. Suleiman fought like a man possessed, each shot precise, each step defiant. 3 mercenaries fell, then 4. But still they advanced, relentless. Ibrahim grabbed Malik's hand. "Run!" They darted through a side arch, stumbling into the stables where horses reared in panic, hooves striking against stone. The smell of hay and blood filled the air. Ibrahim cut the tether of a black stallion, his hand steady despite the fury raging around him. "Climb," he ordered. Malik hesitated. "And you?" I said. "Climb." The boy obeyed, scrambling onto the horses. Back. Ibrahim swung up behind him just as Suleiman burst into the stables, his rifle empty, his face smeared with soot and blood. "They'll follow you," he gasped. "Ride hard, ride far. I'll hold them here." Ibrahim's chest tightened. "Suleiman, go!" The word was thunder, leaving no room for argument. Ibrahim spurred the stallion forward. The gates of the stables shattered as the horse bolted into the night, hooves pounding against stone, fire painting the sky behind them. Malik clung to him, small hands gripping tight around his waist. Gunfire chased them, bullets sparking against the walls. But the stallion flew, swift and untamed, carrying them through the smoke and into the darkness beyond. Behind them, the palace blazed, a fortress of fire, its walls crumbling, its secrets exposed to the night. Ibrahim did not look back. His focus was on the boy, the hidden prince whose existence had already torn the nation apart. The fire would not stop with the palace. It would spread as surely as dawn. And somewhere within that blaze, Ibrahim knew his destiny had been bound forever to the child at his side. The stallion's hooves thundered across the dry earth, each strike echoing like a drumbeat of survival. Smoke still curled in the distance, the palace burning as if the city itself were bleeding. The wind cut sharp against Ibrahim's face, carrying with it the acrid scent of ash, the memory of betrayal. Malik clung tightly to his waist, silent, but trembling, his thin frame pressed against Ibrahim's back. The boy had not spoken since they fled. Not a word, not even a cry. His silence weighed heavier than the gunfire they'd left behind. The road they followed was no road at all, just an unmarked path of dust and thorn that wound into the vast openness of the Sahel. By dawn, they would be far from Ouagadougou. By the next night, if they survived, they would vanish into the desert where no mercenary nor trader could easily follow. But Ibrahim knew this escape was not salvation. It was exile. The first pale glow of morning crept across the horizon, painting the sky with hues of amber and violet. The stallion slowed, its breath ragged, foam streaking its neck. Ibrahim dismounted, his legs stiff, his back aching from the long ride. Malik slid down beside him, his bare feet stirring the dust. The boy's eyes lifted to the horizon where the desert began its endless sweep. There was no fear in them, only something Ibrahim could not place. Acceptance, or perhaps destiny. "We'll rest here," Ibrahim said, voice hoarse. They crouched beside a cluster of acacia trees, their twisted roots clawing the dry earth. Ibrahim unstrapped a canteen from his belt and handed it to Malik. The boy drank sparingly, as though he had lived his entire life conserving every drop. "Why do they want me dead?" Malik finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ibrahim studied him, the faint sunlight tracing the boy's sharp features. "Because you are dangerous." "I'm just a boy." "No," Ibrahim said. "You are a story, and stories can topple kingdoms." For 3 days they traveled, avoiding roads, moving by night, hiding by day. The desert grew harsher with each step. Sand stretched endlessly, shimmering like molten gold beneath the sun. Wind howled through canyons of stone, carrying with it the whispers of ancient kingdoms long buried. Their supplies dwindled. The canteens emptied. The stallion grew weaker, stumbling under the weight of heat and hunger. Yet Malik did not complain. When Ibrahim faltered, it was the boy who urged him forward, steady, unyielding. On the 4th night, beneath a sky splattered with stars, they camped near the ruins of an abandoned caravanserai. The crumbling walls stood like the bones of forgotten travelers. Ibrahim sat beside a dying fire, sharpening his knife, while Malik traced his fingers across the faded carvings in the stone. "These were kings," Malik said softly, pointing at the symbols etched in weathered walls. "They ruled, long before the French, long before the colonizers. Their blood still sleeps beneath the sand." Ibrahim looked up sharply. "How do you know that?" Malik's gaze never left the carvings. "Because their voices speak to me in dreams." For the first time, Ibrahim felt a chill beneath the desert. Heat. On the 5th day, the stallion collapsed and did not rise again. Ibrahim knelt beside the animal, stroking its neck until its last breath faded. Malik watched in silence, his small hand resting on Ibrahim's shoulder as though to steady him. They continued on foot, their shadows stretching long and thin beneath the merciless sun. Ibrahim carried what little remained of their supplies, while Malik walked beside him with the endurance of someone far older than his years. At night, when Ibrahim closed his eyes, he dreamed not of the palace or the fire, but of tombs buried beneath shifting sands, doors of stone opening, voices, chanting in a tongue he could not understand. Always, Malik stood at the center, crowned in light. By the 6th night, their strength had nearly broken. Ibrahim's lips cracked from thirst, his vision blurred. He stumbled often, his body dragging behind his will. Malik, though pale, remained, steady, almost guiding him. When Ibrahim collapsed to his knees, gasping, it was Malik who took his arm. "Get up," the boy said firmly. "You cannot fall here." Ibrahim laughed bitterly, his voice raw. "I led armies into battle. I overthrew tyrants, and now I die in the sand." "No," Malik said, his eyes burning with strange certainty. "You are not meant to die yet. You have not seen the tombs." "The tombs?" Malik nodded. "The kings are waiting." On the seventh dawn, the desert broke. Before them rose a plateau of stone, jagged and towering, its cliffs carved with markings that shimmered faintly in the morning light. The air was cooler there, the wind carrying scents of something ancient. Dust, incense, memory. Malik's face lit with recognition. "We are close." Ibrahim stared at him, suspicion stirring. "You've been here before?" "Not in this life," the boy answered. The words unsettled Ibrahim more than the gunfire ever had. They climbed the plateau, their hands scraping against sharp rock, their bodies trembling from exhaustion. When they reached the summit, Ibrahim saw what lay beyond, and his breath caught. In the valley below stretched ruins half buried in sand, towering pillars cracked but still standing, broken statues of kings whose faces stared blankly towards eternity. And, at the heart of it all, a vast stone door, half exposed, carved with sigils that pulsed faintly as though alive. "The tombs of the forgotten kings," Malik whispered. Ibrahim felt the weight of history pressing against him, heavier than the desert, heavier than his own doubt. For the first time since the night of fire, he realized this exile was no accident. The boy had not led him into the desert to flee. He had led him home. The valley lay before them like a wound torn open by time. Ibrahim stood on the ridge, his chest rising and falling with labored breath, eyes fixed on the ruins below. The broken pillars jutted from the sand like ribs of a long-dead beast. Statues lay toppled, their faces eroded by centuries of wind, their crowns shattered and half-buried. But it was the door at the heart of it all that drew him. A colossal slab of stone carved with spirals and sigils, its surface faintly glowing, as if lit from beneath. He felt it before he understood it, the pull of something vast, something older than nations. It was as though the desert itself exhaled, calling him forward. Malik was already moving down the slope, his bare feet finding paths between rocks as though he knew every step. Ibrahim followed, unease gnawing at his chest. "Wait," he said, his voice echoing across the emptiness. "How do you know this place?" Malik paused only long enough to look back. His dark eyes gleamed with the certainty no child should possess. "Because they have been waiting for me." The air grew cooler as they descended into the valley. The wind died, replaced by a strange stillness, as if the ruins themselves held their breath. Ibrahim touched one of the fallen statues, running his calloused hand across its cracked surface. Beneath the dust, he saw patterns, lines carved not by erosion but by design, warriors, kings, processions. A history older than the books of colonizers, older than the legends sung in village fires. When they reached the door, Ibrahim stopped. The carvings shimmered faintly, like embers in stone. He pressed his palm against the surface. It thrummed. Beneath his skin, a low hum. Alive. "This is no tomb," he muttered. "It is a warning." Malik stepped forward, his small hand brushing the symbols. As his skin met the stone, the humming deepened. The air thickened. The sigils lit brighter, flowing like rivers of fire. The ground trembled. Dust fell from the cliffs above, and slowly, impossibly, the great door split down the center and began. to open. Darkness yawned beyond. A breath of air escaped the chamber, heavy with incense and age, carrying the scent of forgotten rituals. Ibrahim's instincts screamed to turn back, yet his legs carried him forward, following Malik into the shadow. Torches along the walls flared to life, igniting one by one, as though awakened by their presence. The chamber revealed itself, a vast hall supported by pillars carved with the likeness of kings. Their eyes followed intruders with cold authority. Coffers and relics lay scattered, gold, ivory, jewels, but none of it fresh. Dust covered the treasures as if no thief had ever dared disturb them. At the center stood a raised dais, upon which rested a sarcophagus of black stone. It was immense, its surface carved with patterns that seemed to shift in the firelight. Malik ascended the steps without hesitation. Ibrahim, heart pounding, followed, his every sense alive with unease. The boy laid his hand on the sarcophagus. The carvings flared, light flooding the chamber. The air vibrated with a low chant, not sung by human throats but whispered by the walls themselves. Ibrahim staggered back, clutching his head as voices poured into his mind, voices of kings long dead. Blood of the line. Banished, yet unbroken. The rightful heir. He gasped, struggling to breathe. "What is this?" he cried. Malik turned to him, eyes glowing faintly in the torchlight. "It is the truth. They hid me, because they feared what I am." The whispers coiled tighter, weaving visions before Ibrahim's eyes. He saw a throne hall centuries ago, a queen cradling a newborn child. He saw betrayal, advisors plotting in shadows, soldiers carrying the infant away in the night. He saw the baby abandoned in the dust, his bloodline erased by decree, his name stricken from records, and he saw the present. Malik, standing in the ruins, the same blood running in his veins. The voices rose as one. The hidden prince. Ibrahim fell to his knees, sweat pouring from his brow. His mind reeled, torn between disbelief and the undeniable weight of what he had seen. "No," he whispered. "This is madness, a trick." But Malik only looked at him with calm certainty. "It is not madness. It is why they fear me, why they tried to kill me." The chamber dimmed. The voices faded, leaving only the crackle of torches. Ibrahim rose unsteadily, his hand tightening on his knife as though it could anchor him. "You expect me to believe you are the heir to kings?" he asked. "I don't expect you to believe," Malik said. "I expect you to remember." Ibrahim froze. "Remember?" The boy stepped closer. "You too are tied to this place. You feel it. That is why you protected me when others wanted me dead. Why you brought me here, though you did not know why." Ibrahim's breath caught. In the silence of the tomb, in the weight pressing down upon him, he could not deny it. The boy's words rang true, but truth was not salvation. It was fire. "If this knowledge escapes," Ibrahim said darkly, "the nation will burn. Rival factions will rise. They will crown you or kill you, and either way, the land will bleed." Malik's face hardened, his boyish innocence tempered by something ancient. "Then you must choose, Ibrahim. Protect the lie or protect me." They lingered in the tomb for hours, exploring chambers that twisted deep into the earth. They found murals depicting battles, coronations, betrayals, each telling the rise and fall of dynasties. The kings of old had not been immortal, but their legacy was. In one chamber, Ibrahim discovered a tablet etched with lines of prophecy. Though much was worn away, fragments remained clear. "When the kingdom forgets its blood, a hidden son will rise, banished, yet crowned by fate. And a protector, forged by war, will guard him through fire and shadow." The words clawed at Ibrahim's heart. Protector. Had he not spent his life as one? guarding the weak, fighting tyrants, placing himself between his people and their oppressors? Was Malik his final duty? He wanted to deny it, to walk away, to bury the boy here and silence the prophecy forever. But when he looked at Malik, standing so small yet carrying the weight of centuries, he knew he could not. That night, they camped within the tomb, the torches still burning as if fueled by unseen hands. Ibrahim could not sleep. His mind churned with doubt, fear, and something dangerously close to belief. Malik, lying beside him, whispered into the darkness, "You are afraid." "Yes," Ibrahim admitted, "because if you are what they say, the world will never be the same." The boy's voice was soft, steady. It was never meant to be. By dawn, Ibrahim had made his decision. He would not kill Malik. He would not abandon him. But neither could he let the truth be unleashed upon a fragile nation. He would guard the boy, shield him from those who sought his life, and bury the knowledge, deep until the time came when destiny demanded its price. As they emerged from the tomb into the rising sun, Ibrahim felt the desert watching, waiting. The hidden prince had been found. But the war for his place in the world had only just begun. Night sky above Ouagadougou was thick with smoke and fire. From the palace balcony, Ibrahim saw the city blaze with unrest. Torches lit the streets not in celebration but in fury. Factions had finally risen. Some marched carrying Malik's name on their lips, demanding his crowning as rightful heir. Others cursed his existence, calling Ibrahim a traitor who sheltered, an impostor. The fragile balance Ibrahim had tried to hold together was tearing apart. The sound of drums rolled like thunder through the alleys. The clang of steel echoed in the distance. Ouagadougou had become a battlefield of shadows and whispers, finally breaking into open fire. Inside the palace walls, Malik stood by Ibrahim's side, no longer the ragged boy from the slums, but a figure, transformed. His stance was steady, his chin lifted. The flickering torchlight revealed a calm determination on his young face, an unsettling reminder that destiny had chosen him long before either of them had a say. "I told you this day would come," Malik said quietly. Ibrahim's gaze was hard. "I tried to delay it, to shield you, but storms do not wait for permission." By midnight, the palace gates shuddered under attack. A coalition of mercenaries and traitors from within had stormed the city's outer defenses. Loyalists fought back desperately, but the enemy pressed closer. The air reeked of iron and smoke. In the great hall, Ibrahim gathered his most trusted allies. The marble floor was streaked with mud and blood. Their voices shook with urgency. "Sir, they want the boy. If we give him up, they will not have him." Ibrahim's words cut like stone. "Alive or dead." A hush fell. His eyes, cold and unwavering, silenced any protest. The attack came swiftly. Fire arrows lit the night as enemies surged toward the palace gates. Ibrahim led from the front, sword in hand, cutting through the chaos. Beside him, Malik was kept under heavy guard, yet the boy's eyes never wavered from the flames. The invaders' battle cry was clear. "Bring us the prince." Steel clashed, shields splintered, bodies fell. The palace courtyard became a furnace of blood and fire. Through the smoke, Ibrahim fought with the ferocity of a man defending not just a boy but the fragile soul of a nation. His blade moved like lightning, his voice commanding soldiers who were near breaking. Yet for every wave they cut down, another surged forward. At the heart of the chaos, Malik broke free from his guards. He climbed the palace steps, his figure framed by firelight. For a moment the fighting stilled as both sides saw him, a boy standing unflinching before the storm. "I am Malik of the slums," he cried, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "I am Malik of the blood of kings. If you seek me, "Here, I stand." The words struck like thunder. Even Ibrahim faltered. The mercenaries froze, torn between seizing him and kneeling. Some of the loyalists fell to their knees, tears streaming, whispering prayers of prophecy. But the enemies surged again, louder, fiercer. Ibrahim grabbed Malik by the arm, dragging him back inside. "You'll be killed!" Malik's eyes burned, with defiance. "Better to die as who I am than live as a shadow." They retreated into the throne room. The golden chair loomed before them, untouched for generations, a relic of kings long buried. Malik's gaze fixed on it. "This is what they fight for," Ibrahim said bitterly, "a chair of wood and gold, a symbol that has already destroyed nations." "No," Malik answered softly, "they fight for what it means. And symbols do. Not die. They live, whether you deny them or not." Before Ibrahim could answer, the great doors burst open. Enemy soldiers flooded in. The throne room became the final battleground. Ibrahim fought like a lion, cutting down all who came near. His blade was streaked with blood, his body marked with wounds. Around him, the air shook with cries and steel. At the throne, Malik stood tall, refusing to hide. The boy's defiance became a beacon. Even soldiers who had come to kill hesitated, shaken by the sight of him. And then, in the heart of the chaos, Ibrahim felt it. That choice, heavy and final. He could silence Malik here and now, end the storm, in one swift strike. Or he could raise him up, let the symbol live, and watch the world be remade in ways he could not control. Every instinct as a soldier told him to crush the danger. But every whisper of the tomb, every step of this journey, told him the opposite, that Malik was not the nation's ruin, but its buried heartbeat. Ibrahim dropped his blade. He lifted Malik's arm high before the stunned crowd. His voice boomed. "Like thunder, behold your prince, hidden no longer, crowned not by my word, but by the blood of your forefathers and the fire of your hearts." The room froze. Soldiers on both sides lowered their weapons. Some wept. Others bowed. Malik stood in shock, then straightened, his eyes shimmering with tears. In that moment, the boy of the slums vanished, replaced by something greater. The enemy commanders, seeing their cause collapse, fled into the night. Those who had fought against the boy found themselves unable to strike him down. The battle ended not with victory, but with surrender to destiny. Dawn broke over Ouagadougou. The fires were still smoldering, but the streets were quiet. From the palace balcony, Ibrahim stood beside Malik as the city gathered below. "I did not want this for you," Ibrahim said softly. "I know," Malik replied, "but you gave me something greater. You gave me time. You gave me a choice." Ibrahim looked at him, pride and sorrow etched deep into his face. "No, I gave the nation its prince. What you do with that gift will decide if my choice was salvation or damnation." Malik turned to the people, raising his hand. Their cheers rose like a tide, washing over the palace, echoing through the broken streets. The hidden prince was hidden no longer, and in Ibrahim's heart, a quiet truth. Settled, history had claimed them both,